note balance is $19.84. For customer assistance, billing inquiries, or to block future calls, dial 1-877.
You can pick up if you want.
04249.
It's Kent.
To hear the cost of this call, press 8 now. To accept this call, press 5. This call is subject to monitoring and recording. Do not use three-way or call waiting features during this call. Thank you for using Global Tel Link.
Hey, good evening. You have just a minute?
Yes, sir. I always have a minute for you.
All right. Well, I found several things. I found the certificate of incorporation for the IRS, and I'm going to send it to you. I found some of the affidavits people filled out about the comment worse than rape. So I can read those, and you can record them, and then you can get the actual documents and post them later.
Very good. We are recording now, so feel free to read them, or however you however you desire to proceed. We're ready to go.
Okay. Well, on January of 2007, I went in to be given my sentence before Judge Rodgers, Judge Casey Rodgers, same judge on this case. And she said, your crime is worse than rape. I'm giving you 10 years in prison. Words to that effect. Later, when we got the transcript of the trial, after waiting 16 months to get it, that comment, and who knows what else, had been edited out. And I think Congress should do a complete investigation. They should get the audio. If they find a single mistake, of course, that is wrong and bad and something should be done. And there obviously is this one. So we asked, as part of our appeal process, several people who were there to sign an affidavit saying, I heard this in court. Okay. So here is one from Diane K. Hummel, and you can write to her. I don't have her phone number, but she is at 116B, letter B, Oleander Street. She lives in a trailer that the ministry owns in Pensacola, Florida, 32503. You could probably call and get her phone number, call the ministry. But Diane Hummel filled one out. Let me read it. Just read a couple of
Mr. Hovind, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you say call the ministry, you mean which ministry is that specifically?
Creation Today.
Yes, sir. Okay, very good.
If you want to talk to Diane and get her testimony, she just had hip replacement surgery, and tell her I said hi, and after you talk to her, say, Kent said get to work.
Okay.
Tell her that. Okay. Here's what John Gusty said. John Gusty built some of our dinosaurs. He's a fabulous artist, worked for us for 9 years. You can write to him, and you can probably get his phone number from that data. John said on April 11th of 08, to whom it may concern, this letter is to bear witness to the words expressed by the Honorable Judge Rodgers, presiding over the trial and sentencing of Dr. Kent Hovind. I was not present during the trial, but was present during the entire sentencing procedure. I gave personal testimony.
This call is from the San Jose County Sheriff's Office.
I gave personal testimony pertaining to the character of Dr. Hovind to the court just before final sentencing judgment was handed down. During the final sentencing, Judge Rodgers made the statement about, and to Dr. Hovind, and I quote, "You are worse than a rapist," end quote. I attest and do personally bear witness to the fact. Sincerely, John W. Gusty, G-U-S-T-I. Here's one by my son, Kent Andrew, who was there. He said, I remember the day Dr. Kent Hovind was sentenced. Judge Rodgers said she was giving him 10 years for the crimes he was convicted of. I also remember her saying that the crimes you are convicted of are worse than that of a rapist. I will never forget those words. They echo in my mind even ever since that day from my son, Kent Andrew. Here's one from my wife, Jo Hovind. January 19th, 2007, I sat in the courtroom with my husband, Dr. Kent Hovind, for sentencing. There were some things that I will never forget about that day. One of those was Judge Rodgers' degrading speech as she sentenced my husband. Among other things, she said that she had received letters from some saying that surely she did not consider Dr. Hovind's crime as offensive as such heinous crimes as murder and rape. I distinctly remember when Judge Rodgers said, Mr. Hovind, I do consider what you have done to be worse than rape. I find that glaringly missing from the transcript submitted as my truthful statement, Jo Hovind. Here's one from Katie D. Rudolph, the one I told you about. She said, To whom it may concern, on the night of June 27th, 2002, I was awakened by a stranger forcibly entering my first-floor college apartment. About 5 hours later, I was a different person. The events that took place in those 5 hours were the most horrific events I've ever experienced in my 20 years. 5.5 years later, the night my life was marked is still burned impermeably in my mind. I had been raped. On the afternoon of January 19, 2007, I was sitting in the courtroom of the sentencing of Kent and Joe Hovind, during which Judge Casey Rodgers announced that Kent Hovind would spend the next 10 years of his life in prison. She stated her sentencing was harsh because tax-related crimes he committed were worse than committing the violent crimes such as murder and rape. The words coming out of her mouth were as bone-chilling to me as that unfamiliar touch on that night my world was turned upside down. Just as vividly as I remember that statement, I remember praying to God that no one in the courtroom would ever be a victim of a truly violent crime. No amount of money, regardless of how it was acquired or spent, could ever compare to crimes that were committed against me and my family in those 5 hours. Thank you for your time in Christ, Katie Rudolph. Here's one from Teresa Snyder. This is my son, Kent Andrews' wife's mother, who just died in the last year. Teresa Snyder, that you can write to my daughter-in-law, Danielle, or her father, Henry Schneider, in Pensacola. Okay, to whom it may concern, it's come to my attention that some things were said in court case of Kent and Joe Hovind have been removed from the court transcripts. This is quite disturbing to me, considering our court system should be at least one place that honesty should be held at the very highest level. At the sentencing of Kent Hovind, I heard Judge Casey Rodgers state that what Kent Hovind had done was as bad or worse than a rapist. Now I found out that it's not even in the transcripts. It makes me wonder just what else was removed from this very controversial case transcript. I feel, as a citizen of this country, this situation should be addressed. If our court system, judges, prosecutors are not held extremely accountable to their professional honesty, what does that say about our judicial system? Sincerely, Teresa Schneider. Okay. Now that's just a few of those that filled out affidavits. I'm holding in my hand the Certificate of Incorporation